The Welcome Stranger, the largest alluvial gold nugget ever discovered. It all began the 5th of February 1869 in a remote place called Bulldog Gully. This was the day that would go down in history thanks to two determined Cornish miners, John Deason and Richard Oates. John and Richard, hard at work like any other day, were digging in search of gold. They had no idea that they were about to make one of the most significant discoveries in the history of gold mining. Their shovels hit something hard. The two miners carefully unearthed their find, a colossal gold nugget weighing approximately 72 kilograms. The Welcome Stranger wasn't just remarkable for its size, it was also incredibly valuable. In those days, it was worth just under £10,000. To put that into perspective in today's currency, and based on the size of the gold nugget, it would fetch over $10 million.
Well, hello, boys and girls, because I want to tell you about my great-great-grandfather, who was actually from America. He was a sailor, and he jumped ship here to join the Victorian Gold Rush in 1853. His name was John Augustus Titus. We did also discover that he is actually a descendant of the Mayflower. Now, John Augustus was born in 1822 in a little town called Westchester, in Westchester County, New York. By the age of 16, he was in the American Naval Brigade. In 1846, the Mexican-American War broke out. The next time John Augustus pops up is in the port of London. John Augustus decides he's going to come to Australia on the 10th of April 1854, and he marries a 17-year-old Tasmanian called Mary Wiggins, but they went to the Golden Triangle. So they made their home in Chinaman's Flat, the Eureka Stockade. Chinaman's Flat, it was a paddock. People found some gold, and then everybody else started rushing there. It became a town. Prize fighting was a big thing. John Augustus finished up getting himself quite involved in the prize fighting. So this is where this prize fight starts that my great-great-grandfather got involved in. So here we have again in Bell's life, and this is dated the 6th of June. Fight between John Burke and Fred Smith for £400 from our Maryborough correspondence. And it goes on. A more than ordinary amount of interest has been excited by this fight. The arrest of Smith, as reported in our previous issue, was as if it were an omen of ill luck, and we regret to say has been fulfilled. The fight having been brought to an abrupt conclusion in the second round by a foul blow from Burke. A great deal of excitement was created by this occurrence, and a scene of riot ensued, which we never saw before, and trust never shall see again displayed in the ring. The blow was one of those right-hand round-body blows which Burke is frequently in the habit of delivering, and which struck Smith about 4 inches below the belt in the right groin. Ouch. Immediately on being struck, he held up his hands, and the referee declared it to be a foul, and the battle over. Your representative, seeing the probability of a dispute, at once went to Smith, who was immediately stripped, and the writer saw that the mark of the blow was then perfectly apparent. The moment he left, the other party, immediately, being Burke, rushed the referee and commenced ill-treating him. Now the referee goes on, believing his life to be in danger, he cried, "But Carvey!" And I didn't know what that was, but I looked it up, and it means you're guilty, as if he's saying that to the other guy, to Burke. So Burke is actually laying into the actual referee. Then the referee promised that the fight should go on and that he would follow Smith and bring him back. This, for the time, saved him, and he got out of the ring. He then came to your correspondent and gave him the written decision marked number 1, no person being present but those whose names appear on the paper. Fighting was now going on in all parts of the ring, and believing the matter to be ended, I left. To my surprise, on the following day, I was again waited on by the referee, who was attended by a large number of Burke's backers, and the document marked number 2 handed to me, with a request that I forward it to Bell's Life, which I have of course complied with. I cannot, however, as your reporter, avoid stating there can be no second question about the blow being a foul one, and that the decision given by the referee to the umpires in the ring and to myself in writing as your representative was a most unqualified one and given without slightest hesitation. With regard to the men themselves, there is little to be said. Both are capital specimens of middleweight men, and both are in excellent condition. Smith perhaps looked a little too fleshy about the chest, but this, I believe, is owing to his build and not a defect which could be counteracted by his trainer. He weighed 10 stone and stands 5 feet 6.5 inches. He was born at Liverpool about 1830. This appears to have been his first legitimate appearance in the prize ring, his only previous performance having been with Morris at Fiery Creek in 1856, when, after a mill of 4 rounds, he lost by a foul blow. He was trained by Tom Wren and seconded by Bill Branch and his trainer. Burke could not have been in finer condition. He was born at Drogheda in 1830 and is consequently 27 years of age. On the day of the fight, he stated himself to weigh 10 stone 7 pound. His first appearance was with Liverpool Jack Rogers, whom he fought at Sabina, United States in 1847, and beat after a mill of 54 rounds, extending over an hour and a half. His next turn-up was at Dandenong, PP, with Dalton in 1849, whom he beat in 2.5 hours. Wow, that's a long time to be bare-knuckle fighting. The number of rounds we could not ascertain. His last, prior to the present one, was with Lampriel in this vicinity in February of the present year, when, after a fight of 3 hours and 27 minutes, during which 70 rounds were fought, he was again victorious. He was trained by Thomas Fox and seconded by him and Dan Timmins. Now, we'll get some more information on the actual fight. Round 1. On time being called, both men came to the scratch, each evidently waiting for the other to begin. After some sparring, Smith tried the left, but without any apparent intention of getting home with it, and both men appeared anxious to get an insight into the other's tactics. Burke feinted with his right, then drew off a little and was closely followed up. Some pretty sparring followed. A second attempt of Smith was more fortunate, getting his right onto Burke's breadbasket. Believe that's the chest. The blow, however, was not an effective one. Some dodging ensued and Burke went down without any apparent reason. Second and last round. On again towing the mark, both men started a sparring game, Smith laughing heartily. After some seconds sparring, Smith feinted with the left and then stepped back. Burke followed up and struck a round hand blow with the right hand, which was about 4 inches below the belt and consequently foul. The fight was at once claimed and the referee decided in Smith's favour when he was at once taken out of the ring. And here we go a bit further. The following are copies of the 2 various decisions of the referee above referred to. Number 1. I hereby decide that the blow struck by Burke in the second round was below the belt and consequently foul. Signed, John Titus, referee. There he is, great-great-granddad. Witnessed by Thomas Cuttle and Thomas Ford. Then, now remember, if you remember back further, the reporter says that the referee comes towards him, followed by a horde of Burke's followers. And so he says, in the second one, I hereby declare that the decision given by me at the fight yesterday, 1st of June, was a forced one, and given under circumstances which I do not consider binding, as I do believe that my life was then in danger. I now wish on deliberation to state that the fight should have gone on. Signed, John Titus. Witnessed by James Hugh Gearing and William Lambton Lewis. And then in brackets, in all our experience of the prize ring, we never saw or heard of such a miserable counterfeit of a fight. The above account rather leads to the belief that the whole affair was a wretched imposture. Editor, Bell's Life. If we go down a bit further, it says, Smith and Burke. Since our last publication, we've received £180 more on account of the stakes in this fight, making altogether £340 held by us. We've also received a letter from Mr. Calvert of Denali stating that he has paid, and I can't make that out because you can't see it, so many pounds into the London Chartered Bank, Denali, to the credit of the editor of Bell's Life. We have accordingly drawn a cheque on the bank named for £60, must be £60, but have not yet heard whether it has been honoured, which would have made the £400 price. And then the following week, it's fun. There is more. The ring. The late fight between Burke and Smith. We have this week received several letters on the above subject, but only 2 of these require special notice as coming from parties connected with the decision of the affair. One of these is signed John Titus, dated from Chinaman's Flat as follows. To the editor of Bell's Life in Victoria, says, Sir, as there has been so much said concerning the last fight between Burke and Smith, I consider it my duty, this for the last time, to let the public know that there has been no bribe on either side, as has been reported all over the colony. So obviously people were accusing him of being bribed because he changed his decision. Or probably the Burke lot said that he was being bribed by Smith to say it was a foul blow. Obviously was a foul blow because the reporter actually saw the mark on the body that was below the belt. And it goes on and says, and I wish to let the public know that I am a man that works hard for a living and have a family to support, and will have nothing more to say concerning it, only that I shall not consent to give either man the money. They must draw their stakes or fight it over again. Signed, John Titus. Witnesses, David P. Keller and Samuel Thompson. We've also received a memorandum of decision, of which the following is a copy. I, John Titus, do hereby declare that I adhere to my first decision, given to Bell's Life Reporter, and direct the money be paid over to Fred Smith. Signed, John Titus. Witnesses, James Hugh Gearing and John Thomas Havel. We have thus received 2 more contrary decisions from the referee, and independently of any special doubts upon our mind regarding this very singular affair, we think it only due to ourselves to state that we are not willing to incur any legal responsibilities which may render us liable to a second demand for this money. We shall therefore require a release from the parties from whom we receive the deposits before we pay over the £400. We do not wish to throw any difficulties in the way of Smith, nor do we wish to retain the stakes for one moment longer than necessary for our own protection. But we certainly do not intend to allow ourselves to be put in a position we should be where the dispute to be renewed after we had parted with the stakes without full and legal authority. We rely on those interested in the affair to place us in a position free from all money responsibility, and upon their doing so, we will gladly forego the place of stakeholder, which we are always unwilling to fill, unless where we personally know the parties interested. Our only object is to do right without risk to ourselves. So John Titus has gone back to his original decision, but obviously John Burke scared him that much that he changed the decision and said that the fight could have gone on, but now he's reverted back to his original decision, which was the correct one in the first place. But the paper's still got all the money, but they won't release it to Smith without agreement from both, because otherwise Burke can come back at them for the money, and they don't want that legal responsibility. Poor old great-granddad. And this is the final bit about this one. I'll just get it up. And it's only a little short one. The Ring. Burke and Smith, we have this week received a letter as follows. June 17th, 1857. I, John Burke, do hereby protest against the decision given by the referee John Titus this day on the ground of his having given a different one yesterday, which decision was forwarded to the editor of Bell's Life in Victoria. Signed, J. Burke, witness J.R. Cutty. Well, so that seems to be the end of it. I don't know who got the money in the end. I'm yet to find out, but John Burke's still protesting, but I haven't been able to find any further articles about it yet. The next thing that happens in John Augustus's life, of which we see something in the newspapers, is about a quoits match. Now, quoits apparently was just as popular as prize fighting, and they did have prize matches for playing quoits. Who would have thought? My goodness me. And this article is from the Maryborough and Denali newspaper and dated 22nd of February 1859. And it's an article telling about what happened in the Denali Police Corps. So I'm not going to put myself on the screen with the article because I've had to restart this computer 3 times to try and get this video finished for you because it keeps overheating, and I don't know whether it's the platform I'm using or whether it's my computer. Maybe it's a bit of both. Anyway, the article says, John Titus was summoned by James Sullivan for assault, damages of £20. This case arose out of a fracas that took place at the bar of the Golden Age Hotel, Sandy Creek, on the day of the celebrated quoit match. The plaintiff, it appeared, had been flourishing banknotes in his hand and offering to fight any man. The defendant, great-granddad, feeling his manhood insulted, gave the challenger a licking without depositing his stakes. The plaintiff, defeated, now summoned the party for the castigation. But the case was dismissed and the court was adjourned. So it appeared that great-great-grandfather didn't mind having a bit of a spar himself, a bit of a boxer, and liked a bit of a bet, I would say. Look, I've been going so long, all my lipstick's worn off. That's bad, isn't it? What else happened to John Augustus in his life? Well, a couple of things. By 1865, he went broke and claimed bankruptcy due to losses in mining and sickness in the family. And it appears like this was a bit of a common thing. When mining wasn't going well, they needed to get rid of their debts because they weren't able to pay the money. So, you know, as much as there were people finding these magnificent nuggets, not everybody made a killing out of being a gold miner. What I am going to do, though, is I am going to share my screen from Ancestor Ancestry to just save me that whole hassle of having to write down all about his family. So John Augustus had quite a few children with Mary, and we have Hannah Matilda, or Annie as she was known, Titus, and that is my great-grandmother, who was born in 1856, John Titus, 1858, who passed away as an infant. So then in 1860, they had another male, and they called him John Titus. Then we have Thomas Titus, 1862, Mary Ellen Titus, 1864, Margaret Titus, 1866, Emmeline, 1869, Flora Jane, 1872, and then finally Henry Titus, who again another infant that died in infancy in 1874. So he had quite a few children, poor Mary, on the goldfields and having all those children, and they did stay in that Tarnagalla area all the time. Now, the next thing I want to tell you is the big major event that occurred for him that was a disaster. I'll just unshare that for a minute and change the screen over to this article here. So this is an article, this appeared in the Bendigo Advertiser on the 27th of August 1867, and I'll just have a quick peek. So at this stage, this happened when he was 45. So he wasn't an old man by our standards, but I guess going by the standards of the day, he probably would have been considered a decent age at that age. But this article appeared. Mining accident at Tarnagalla. Mining accident at Tarnagalla. A very shocking accident happened in the neighbourhood of Tarnagalla on the 23rd to John Titus, a miner, working on Growler's Hill. You got to love the names of these places, don't you? He had drilled a hole, put in a blast, and was in the act of tamping it down with a wooden tamper when it is supposed that two pieces of quartz came in collision, striking fire, which exploded the blast. The poor fellow presents a most horrible appearance. His face is completely covered with powder, his right arm is fearfully injured, and there is great danger of his losing his sight, although Dr. Grant has been trying his best to save it. During the afternoon, the unfortunate man was removed to the Denali Hospital. So poor John Augustus, he's mining away, he's only 45, his children aren't that old, and this has happened. And basically, as a result of this, he did blast off half his face, and I can only assume, because this is, as I said, this is 1867. Photography was only in its infancy at this stage. But I do know that sort of those 1860s was when I started to get a lot of photos of other family members. I'm assuming that the reason John Augustus, that there are no photos, is because he didn't get his photo taken because he had blown himself up. Poor John Augustus. So, what's next? Well, unfortunately, the next thing on the books is, yes, you guessed it, when he passes away. And he dies quite a young man, by our standards, of course, but back in the day considered to be a decent age. It's a bit sad, isn't it? So I want to read you his obituary because it is quite interesting. It gives a very short overview of the things that he said happened to him in his life. And this is where it's quite interesting because, he has said that he went to the California Gold Rush, but I don't have proof of that. He said he was fighting in the Mexican War, but yet he was in England supposedly in amongst all that. So did he go back and forward? I'm not really sure. Haven't got the proof of that. But keep working on it until we do get the proof. But just bear with me while I bring up this other article. So here we are, and this is in the Melbourne Age, which is a statewide newspaper basically, and they would take snippets from all the country newspapers and share them in their columns, and they often had like this one, Country News, so that everyone, even if they only bought the Age, they would get the news from all over the place. So this article came from the Denali Express, and this is reporting this. So this is 12th of August 1875, it should be. Yes, indeed it is. This goes on to say, the Denali Express reports the death at Tarnagalla of an old resident, Mr. John Titus, on Friday last. The deceased had been a resident of Tarnagalla for upwards of 18 years, and for the last 8 years was totally blind from the effects of a mining accident while tamping a charge of powder in a quartz claim on Growler's Reef. He was a man who had seen some stirring times in his day. An American by birth, he served his apprenticeship in the Navy of the United States and afterwards served with the American Naval Brigade throughout the whole of the Mexican War. He was one of the first gold miners in California and came to the colonies in 1853. So that is what it says about John Augustus. Well, I finally might be able to get this thing together now that I've actually recorded all the necessary parts. But yeah, what an interesting life. Like born in America, sailing around the world. If he was involved in the Mexican War and if he did go California Gold in the gold rush, and then off to London, which we know he was, jumping ship here in Australia to become part of the gold mining rush here in Victoria, only an hour and a half down the road from me, and I never knew that I was related to him. And yeah, an absolutely amazing story. So that is my story for this week, boys and girls. So I will come up with some ideas of what we might do for next week, and you can vote on which story you would prefer to have, or you guys put in the comments of this story the type of history story that you would like to hear, and I will tell you whether I can do it or not. All right, bye now, and see you next time.